Hi, I am Randy, and in this video, we're going to be doing a week of video game development. We're going to take this game that I'm currently working on, turn it from version 0.2 into version 0.3. What is the game, you ask? Well, basically, you go out, you collect resources, you got this little oxygen meter, so you got to make sure to not asphyxiate and die. Oh no. Collection, run back to your base, don't run out of oxygen, put the oxygen in the thing, crafty, buildy, gameplay, high action, epic, research stuff. I mean, yeah, that's basically the whole game. You just keep researching and building and playing the game. It's kind of boring right now, so I guess that's what we're doing in this video, is trying to make it a little bit more fun and slowly push towards a good game. I recently just got done working on this bad boy. The demo's out, it's on Steam, you can play it if you want. Wouldn't recommend it. The onboarding is pretty rough. Actually, I take that back. I would recommend it. You just gotta get through the onboarding and know that there is at least 2 hours of playtime in the game. So I was working on this, got the demo out, and then went to add in more content, but it was too difficult, so I kind of just like gave up and decided to do something new and shiny, which was, in hindsight, probably a mistake. Because I'm getting to the point in this card game right now where I'm at like the exact same point. It's like, oh, okay, so like adding in content is kind of just hard. Game dev is kind of just hard, no matter what you do. So maybe I just got to stick with it and just keep going. So the game I'm currently working on is kind of like the big brother of the hit 10 out of 10 IGN Don't Cold that I did about 2 years ago in 2 weeks in C. The game design for the game was basically what I thought up at the time, but I couldn't execute on it because it was only 2 weeks. I'm like, oh no, I gotta cut out all the scope. So now I'm kind of going back to this and taking Don't Cold, but like doing like the 2-month, 3-month version of it. So I make something, you know, a little bit smaller than Arcana that I was currently working on. And, you know, just try and make something decent, good. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. This video is basically just 1 week of me working on the game, trying to get it to version 3 so I can do some more playtesting and try and make the game more fun. Hope you enjoy. So last night, got done doing a playtest with Cameron, and I've been sleeping on it and just talking and brainstorming up some ideas. So what I'm basically going to do now is just take all the ideas that I've been writing down in my notes here and just translate them onto the board, prioritize them, and then figure out what to do next. The main issue right now is playtime too short and game kind of like just not interesting enough. Like there's not enough going on in it. So yeah, anyway, I'm just gonna translate all the notes real quick and then we will dive into what to do next. How I'm doing things is I just have this little waterline here. So this is the next goal, version 0.3. So everything above here, I basically just want to get done for the next one. That's kind of how I'm thinking about things. Anything that kind of goes below the line is more or less like either not gonna happen or just like simmering and waiting for its chance to happen. It's kind of like just the back burner. Okay, these are all the tasks. Now it's just a matter of like figuring out what is the most bang for buck thing to do next. A lot of ideas came up. A lot of them I'm really excited about. I think the thing that could like make it the most fun is probably adding in enemies that attack your base. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna like sit here and do it, and I'll let you know how it goes. And yeah. Okay, so I got the enemy up and running. Just very, very simple. We have this angry red square running around, whacking you over and over again. It just takes oxygen, so that's cool. We don't have to do like a health bar or anything. We can just like get rid of the oxygen and reuse that basically. In terms of like actually getting this up and running, well, we have a new archetype, which is an enemy. And then all I'm really doing is just like giving it physics and collision. And then I'm calling this like enemy update. This is just in the update function for all the entities. I just put it into a function so it's easier to look at all the enemy logic, because we'll probably have some stuff in the future that introduces more enemies. Basically what I'm doing to move him is taking a target entity, which we're just defining as a player right now, but we could make it whatever. We could make it like machines, or we could make it nothing for it to just sit still. And basically what's happening is like, this is the call. We're just applying some movement to the velocity, right? We're applying some velocity depending on the difference between the target and the entity position, normalizing that, and then we're multiplying it by a movement speed, which is set up here. And now how I got like the attack thing is I basically say when we're kind of close to the enemy, we'll basically just crank the shit out of the movement speed, so it actually looks like he's just just going, and then down here is where we actually collide with them. We're basically just taking the target bounce and our bounce, checking if these two guys overlap, which we just do with this function here. Yeah, if they do overlap, then we'll basically apply some knockback to the enemy, right? Just in the inverse direction of whatever way we're moving by 500. We'll also add a movement cooldown end time. So he's gonna like still for a second. So that's how we apply velocity, and then he just kind of like chills and slows down. If it is the player, then we're just removing oxygen and doing some camera shake. Alright, so it's like this red biome that the bad guys can spawn in. And so they kind of just like have a nest in there. We've also added in a day-night cycle. So now we can basically make it nighttime, drive the night alpha, and I've also just added in point lights. Basically, there's lighting in the game now. So you can see this, I've just given the player a bit of a light so we can see things. But what happens now is when we aggro these guys, the light will turn on. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, point lights, pretty cool. How I did that was asked ChatGPT, and then your boy just copy pasted, basically just fiddled around with it a little bit until things will actually work and how we wanted them to work. Yeah, this is basically the whole shader, so you can look at that if you want. But the general gist of things is that we are passing in an array of point lights into the constant buffer. So we're actually using this guy now. I'm also putting the night alpha in here as well. And now these are kind of funky because you have to pack them across 16 bytes because DirectX we love. So that basically means, you know, a vector 4. We just got some padding in here to make things nice and neat. Also got the Pragma pack push 16 here, which I'm not entirely sure how this works, but it does. It basically means that we can, you know, mirror this struct on the shader and things will be nice and good. Because if we basically got rid of the padding here and this, then things would get hairy because the data wouldn't line up, and this is what would happen. You basically get this message saying, like, screaming at you for being a silly goose. We don't want to be a silly goose, of course. Also, I put this guy into a shader recompile function, so we can now call this live in the game to just hot reload it with Alt X. I've got it down here, so that's pretty helpful when just fucking around with the shader. And this is our little add point light function. The way it works is we can basically pass in the world position, which then gets converted into the screen position because that's what we're using in the shader. We can pass in a color, so if we pass in red and we have the alpha set to 0, then it's actually not going to be red. It's just going to be normal. But if we have the alpha set to 1, then it's going to be like really red point light. So that's how we drive the color, and then we just got radius and intensity. Done and dusted. So there we go. That's basic lighting. I think I'm not exactly sure what the night cycle is going to be like, but the reason I wanted to put this in is because I want these guys to basically just force aggro at nighttime and attack your base. Because I think that could be pretty interesting from a gameplay perspective. But it's nearing the end of the day here, so probably gonna hop off soon. Good progress for a day's work, I'd say. By the way, if you'd like to make your own game in C, I run a school community that is dedicated towards that. It's 100% free, and you can get access to the engine that I'm using to make this game in C and not have to worry about any of the rendering, programming, or any of that bullshit. And you could just focus on making a game. If that's what you want to do, check out the link down in the description, and I will see you on the inside. Okay, I basically just done 2 days worth of work and being kind of like locked in and forgot to record updates. But let's go over what I've been up to. Okay. So that's one thing. There are METEOR strikes now. At the drop resources. I literally just got finished with this yesterday, so I'm still continuing to work on this. That's what I'll do today. But the main thing that I've been focusing on over the last couple days is one, we have these little glowfly things that start spawning at nighttime. That's pretty cool. So I've mainly been focusing on the turret, so we can place this guy down and we have to load him up with ammo. So we'll make some of that as well. Chuck it inside. I basically did a bit of work on the lighting, and by a bit of work I mean just talking to ChatGPT to get it feeling right. So that entire shader is here. Literally just copy paste it from ChatGPT. Does the trick. So during the nighttime, the enemies will aggro out of their nests over here before just get fucking obliterated. So violent, dude. Yeah, and we have these little glow dudes popping off. Pretty cool. I made a little debug key to zoom out. How I did this is I made a rect, and if you make the rect in NDC, which, you know, goes from -1 to 1, -1 to 1, top to bottom, right? And then you basically just times that by the inverse of the world projection, and then also times that by the view. That'll give you the current camera view thing in world space. I just use that to spawn random little firefly things inside that rectangle. So epic. Big epic time. Yeah, I have this really scuffed thing in here, which basically because like we don't want to like blast the shit out of the particles. This is getting hit every single frame. I basically just have this function here that makes it hit every 200 milliseconds. So that's the logic for this. We have a cheeky little local persist in there. Very Ooga Booga caveman. Which of course is the static. Fun stuff that basically hits it every 200 milliseconds to spawn in those nice little glowy guys. Yeah, so that's basically what I've been focusing on. So now there is base defense. I have to play test with it, get it feeling good, and fit it into the game design properly. Oh, okay. There was an interesting thing here where I did an abstraction. Whoa, Randy does an abstraction for the first time in the whole series. You'll recall that we have all these user interface things where the player can open it and like look at a little inventory slot and like put stuff in there. And I noticed myself, oh yeah, we're just copy pasting the same thing over and over again. So I put it into this guy, input slot, which takes in the rectangle where you want to draw it, and the slot, which is just a pointer to whatever slot you're using for the input on the entity state, and the array of desired items for like what can actually go inside here. You'll notice that like, well, I didn't write this until I had like 4 or 5 examples of how it could be used. And that was kind of a good thing because it made me see that, oh, I can't like stuff everything inside here, because this little step afterwards is kind of like we're doing slightly different things for each and every one of them. Kinda. Mainly it's just like drawing an arrow or like, actually, okay, so this guy's drawing like a item shard outline in the ox generator. Burner dude drawing some coal. This guy's also drawing some coal. So, we could pull it out. It's always good to just keep copying, pasting until you're like, oh, maybe I could pull this out. Don't pull it out as soon as you're on ground zero, just writing it out. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Oh, okay. Another interesting thing that I did here is I basically made it so that every single time we load the world, okay, world attempt load from disk, earlier, we were copying some constants in. Now we're actually just like calling the entity setup on every single one of these guys. So we're just recalling the entire thing, basically to override the static data. So what that means is like we could make changes in here to whatever, and they would just be updated in the game without like having to completely restart the world. And you can kind of see why that works is because we're only really overriding the data that is really constant. So, you could probably run into a bug here where you're like, oh, let me like just get rid of this. And now the current ones would be true, but the new ones would be false. So, maybe this is a bad idea, but I found it pretty useful for like iterating and like changing things up. You'll notice we have this guy in here, the entity max health setup. We basically have something inside the frame which checks, is this like a fresh entity? Are we like creating a fresh guy? If we are, then we make the max health equal to health and this guy. But if we're not, we're deserializing something, then we're gonna like do different things depending on what we need to do. First of all, we're always gonna update the new max health with whatever we want, right? And if the previous max health is not equal to the new max health, then we're gonna also update the health. Previous max health is not equal to new max. Yeah, this is a bug. I think we say if the current entity health is equal to the previous max health, which means that we were basically at max health last time. So we're just gonna, update the new health as well. Or if we've decreased it. A little bit confusing, but basically just way of updating the health on an existing save file. Yeah. So I guess we'll see how that pans out. It's been pretty helpful so far. I haven't run into any issues. So yeah, feeling pretty good. I did the turret firing, so we have like a bunch of sound effects. In terms of the actual turret itself, we have the update function in here. So we're just finding the closest enemy and then shooting at them every 500 milliseconds. Yeah, there's like a few things in here which might be kind of useful. A little bit of vector math to get the shoot direction. And we're storing that in the entity because we're going to want to use it for the rendering later on, which I'll show you in a bit. And if we have ammo, then we're, firing our thing off. If we don't, we're playing the no ammo click sound. Adding like a little bit of knockback to the enemy. This is kind of like shitty knockback because it only applies velocity for a single frame. So you'd probably want to like enter some kind of stun state and like knock them back a bit. I don't know. This looks good enough for me. So I'm moving on with my life. In here is a little muzzle flash particle effect, I think. Oh no, this is a blood splatter that comes out of the enemy. We have like a bit of lighting on it. I'm just going ham with the lighting, dude. It like actually looks pretty cool to add light to particle effects. We're gonna hit some kind of like performance limit at some point, but you could kind of see that muzzle flash there. And we got the blood splatter as well. So yeah, cool stuff. I think we have like a point light max of 256 right now. Yeah, I should probably be having a frame counter up to make sure I don't go too crazy to see how much impact this is actually having on performance, but we will solve performance issues when they arise, not before. Okay, so the next interesting thing here with the turret is just the rendering. So if you look at the render entities, we have this guy just overriding the default. I actually wanted to draw the base sprite, which I put out into this function. So this is the default kind of like rendering. It just does that thing that we always do. But I put it into a function so that way, you know, in the render turret, we can call that and then just, you know, draw whatever else we need to on top of it as well, which is what I've done here. So basically the main thing we're doing is just drawing like a little rectangle, which is like the gun, and rotating it to wherever the shoot direction is. So taking this guy, the last shoot direction, which we said earlier, and getting a angle from this vector. So use the cheeky little ATAN 2. This is absolutely excellent if you ever need to get the angle of a vector and have it be really easy. You just pass in the Y and the X, and that'll give you whatever you need to do. We just feed that into a rotation matrix, and that's how we rotate the thing to whatever direction we need to. And then the last thing here is also the muzzle flash. So if we shot, then we're just doing some particle effects here, bunch of lights as well. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's like the whole thing. There's not really anything else aside from the enemies can now target things that aren't players. So that's this guy up here, the nearest target. Basically seeing we have this flag now, which is enemy target. So the turret is an enemy target, machines. So the general idea here is like you have to actually protect your base, because you can't just run away, because then they'll just target your base and fuck up your day. And then last but not least is the METEOR. So that's where I left off yesterday, and we're going to continue on with the work on the march to getting it playtestable once again. So I just have like a little test METEOR spawning in right at start when we reset. Yeah, so this guy's spawning in. You get a little red warning, and if you're inside, then you're gonna just fucking eat shit. But the general idea here is we'll have these kind of like randomly plonking down outside in the wilderness, so you have to dodge them. And they're also going to destroy machines and stuff. So when the meteor strikes, we spawn in a bunch of resources, right? The interesting thing here is that I ported over this function that I had in Arkino Jai a while back, the random weighted archetype. So what this basically does is it takes an array of these guys, archetype weights, which we can just kind of like define inline up here like this. And yeah, we can basically use this to like drive chances. So these don't have to add up to 100, but you could imagine these adding up to 100 just for the sake of demonstration. So this is 20%, 20%, and this is 60%. 60% of the time this will get chosen when we run this function. 20% this guy and another 20% this guy. So that's how it works, but it doesn't have to add up to 100. It's just weighted. So you say, oh, I want these guys spawning in more. You just crank the shit out of that. It's a really handy function just for driving some random stuff that I found. ChatGPT also wrote this entire thing like a while back, so thank you. The other thing here is like the algorithm that I use for spawning it in. It's kind of funky, but it does the trick. So what basically happens is we try and find a spawn position, okay? So we choose like a random position within like the range that we want, which is just like the radius of the asteroid, half of it. And we spawn it in, we snap it to the nearest tile pause based on the archetype, so that snaps it into the nearest tile. And you know, because things could be like 1 wide or 2 tiles wide or 3 wide, you know, this will just kind of like work. It'll be fine. Then I wrote this other function which does overlap existing entities. So we just use this guy from earlier, the get tile pause, just gives us a list of tiles that the entity is in, and we loop over those guys to see if there are any entities in there, and if there are, then we overlap. So yeah, if it does overlap, this will just continue and do another iteration. So then this will come back around and just pick another random position, and like it'll just keep randomly sampling positions until it gets something that's right. And we have like a little failsafe in here that says if we go past 100 iterations, then we're likely just out of space, so let's just break out of this. Most scuffed algorithm ever, but it does the trick. We can actually crank this guy up to like a lot. Say, you know, we try and spawn 3,000 of these guys in. Things won't just infinite loop. So that is pretty cool. And it'll more or less do a pretty good job of like putting as much stuff in as possible. Sometimes you just need to go for good enough instead of perfect, you know? That is the caveman way. Yeah, so if we find the position, then we spawn the entity in. And we also actually have to add the new entity to the tile cache, because we're using the tile cache to check if we're overlapping existing things. It just indexes straight into the tile cache that we have here. But this gets constructed every single frame at the start of the frame. And if we're spawning new things in, then it's not going to be inside the tile cache already. So we have to, you know, manually add this guy in, because gangster shit is happening. I'm thinking we make the turret kind of like also target these guys and destroy them. So it's just like another threat that you have to watch out for. Or maybe get some kind of like anti-meteor laser thing. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But the main reason I actually wanted to do this is you can see the resources spawning in afterwards.
So I was thinking we could actually turn off the resource respawning, have everything kind of be fixed. And now the meteor is going to be the way of kind of continually feeding stuff in, like a slightly more rate limited resource gathering. So then we can start working on other things, kind of like that tile thing that I added in earlier, like a few days ago, but scrapped. I want to do something where it's like a big resource deposit and it's out in the world somewhere. So you have to like go up to it and like place down a machine and like protect the machine with towers and stuff. And that's how you get like that resource renewable, something like that. That is the entire thing. So I'm gonna get back to work and we're gonna keep cranking away onto the next version, 0.3. Yo, peep this. It's so ominous. Yeah, that was fun. I basically just made like a little continuous sound system. So basically what this does is it plays a sound and we kind of like attach it to the entity, and every single frame we can call update attached const sounds with our entity and be like, yo, let's update these sounds. What this basically does is it first just says, yo, we've been updated. Okay, so we store the frame count in here, and we also just update the sound position. The enemy's moving around, so his position changes, right? Now the cool thing about this is I've set it up in a way where this is all you need to call. So if this just stops being hit, it'll automatically stop playing and just destroy the sound. So the way that I set that up, because every single frame we call the F1 update in here. Yeah, this just kills all the stale sounds. So we just look into all the sounds and say, yo, is it updated not equal to frame count? Then we destroy. Destroy just stops it and makes it go bye-bye. Now how I actually made this sound is I went into FL Studio and basically just got this guy, played a key, and here we go. Very epic. We have a loop region here, so that loops around. There's a little bit of a popping in the transition. I don't really know how to get rid of that. I tried my best, but my best is not good enough, apparently. And now how I make this sound good on the stop, because without any of these effects, we could just remove these guys. Like that's really abrupt. The first one is the reverb, which makes it a bit better, but you can still hear the popping sound because it's abruptly stopping. The other thing we do is we come into this audio track and you can right click on this guy, add modulation, ADSR, right? And you just bring the attack all the way down to 0 because we don't want any fade in on the attack, but we want the release. So I just put this to like 600 milliseconds. So that eases out. So that'll get rid of the pumping. And you got to make sure that this isn't on the master, because if this was on the master, then it would also fade out the reverb. So we don't want that. We want just this guy to fade out. And now the sound here gets put into the reverb and has an even better kind of like low, kind of slong, echoey tail on that. So that's how we get that sounding good. And the last but not least, I have a random pitch modulation on this guy to 16 semitones, and that'll... You can hear it changing the pitch every time we play. So what that means is we have like a bunch of these guys playing in unison at different pitches, and it just makes for this kind of like really gnarly sound. The opposite of harmony. The other thing that I did is I disabled the resource respawning. So these guys won't respawn anymore, but there are meteor strikes, like random meteor strikes out in the world. So they'll drop guys down, and that'll be a way to replenish the resources. So these guys will just plonk down. I'm gonna have to balance that, but we're pretty much ready for another playtest at this point.
Sick. Oh, holy shit. Holy shit. Oh, nice. Oh no, angry square. No.
We're on day 26 now at this point. I don't know how many days it's been, man. Alright, so that's one thing I did. I beefed the shit out of the meteors, made the sound effects better, made it way harder to dodge, and way more frequent. So that's pretty cool. The other thing was I was trying to figure out how to spawn in enemies, and I just kind of threw my hands in the air and said, alright, let's just have nests. So these guys spawn now in nests around the world, just chilling there. Oh, I guess in the top right we just have like a time until night, so I guess it kind of clues you in that there's a cycle and that something might happen. The other thing I spent a little bit of time on yesterday was actually just trying to prototype out the art style. I guess prototype out is probably the wrong word, but just trying to like get a feel for how things could look and trying to get them look nice. So I used a reference to grab these trees and the colors. This guy up here. I mainly just tried my best to copy this and like simplify it down into my own style. I just found this on Google Images. No idea what it is, but whoever made it, thank you. I was just trying to fiddle around with the perspective and like see if I can get things feeling nice and correct. Got some nice walls here. Yeah, after this, I basically just balanced the game and got it play testable again, and then gave it to Charlie for a playtest. And since disabling the resource respawning, he basically gave up because he ran out of oxygen.
I would call this game over for me.
So I did a little bit of balancing to hopefully, you know, just enforce the fact that the meteors drop ice no matter what. So it's not up to random chance and just make them spawn more frequently. So maybe that'll fix things. But I'm thinking like long term, which is what I'm working on right now. We have some kind of like ice vein here that you can put your drill on, and that'll just kind of like continually pump out resources to try and automate this a little bit so you can start relaxing and moving on to other things in the game. I guess I'll try and prototype that out next, see if it works. Right now, the goal is still just trying to get towards half an hour of playtime and the game actually being good. Right now, we're pretty far from it, but you know, maybe we'll crack it in the next version. So I'm gonna call it there for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Not anticlimactic at all. Abrupt end